Hi, this is Yafravan. Thank you for anybody who's going to watch this. I really would appreciate some feedback. This is going to be a slightly longer video where I walk through everything that's been added for the pre 1.0 release. I'm also going to talk about how the install process might look, and if I could get feedback on that as well, that would be much appreciated. So this is VMaNGOS SuperUI, and basically it's meant as both a server panel for RA commands for the configuration editor, activity log, live logs, but it's also meant as what I would call a gameplay loop editor so that you can change items, spells, game objects, clone them, tune the loot chances, tune dungeon raids, etc. Again, just loot in that case, not talking about actual gameplay mechanisms at that point. So on the dashboard, yeah, you can start, stop the world. It verifies that you have the different databases. There is a database that gets created with this app called VMaNGOS admin, and what that does is where I store a lot of tracking tables so that you can revert changes. As I'll jump here to the activity log, but anytime there's an action taken where you're inserting or modifying an existing table from the VMaNGOS, or really just called the Mangos database tables, they can be reverted back to their original state for anything that we touch. The console is where the RA commands live. There's a little help here that kind of shows you what all the different buttons do. When that's active, you can hover and see what all these do, but this is just a nice way to wrap these terminal line commands in something that maybe is a little more accessible even to those who don't have a full grasp like me of what each one of these do. The player screen, really it's just a different wrapper, if we will, for maybe some of the RA commands and things you can do. Again, this is very in line with the operations, I guess I would say, of a server. Accounts would show current accounts connected. I don't have any accounts connected right now, so therefore it's empty. And then the realm page is just some other basic settings. The activity log shows what happened and where. I'll come back to this later, but basically when I make a change in the web UI here, it's fully logged, and you can see that in this log. We'll come back. Server logs are more for things going on in the server to be tracked, but again, I don't really have a public server, it's just mine at home. So for me, this doesn't really populate. Live logs. This is a constant data stream coming over from my Linux machine that's hosting the VMaNGOS core, and you can jump around and have different quick collapses if you know what you're looking for. I really don't, but you can also type up here and there we go, loaded, or connection, there we go. Again, some of these things I've added are really just exposing the backend or the SQL tables in a way that makes it easier to access, easier to see and interact with. The config editor is the mangosd.configuration file that affects a number of things in the game world, which I'm sure most of you know better than I do. So I've tried from the different sources to put an explanation under all of the different values that are in that configuration file with sliders and inputs where that's appropriate, so that you can modify these from a UI that's easier to navigate rather than nano open the configuration file, search, change a value. Not that that's a poor way to do it if you like doing that, but for someone like me, I just prefer to do it this way. I think this is a lot easier to interact with. Let's go to the world map. And so this is the world map. You can see Eastern Kingdoms, Kalimdor. If I'm going to go ahead and zoom in down here. For now, I'm only showing custom object spawns. I don't want to show everything, and I've only allowed custom objects to be placed, but I can change this to allow all objects to be placed. If I choose, say, my test shrine, I was to click on a spot, let's say here, I'm going to have the orientation be east. It's not going to be perfect. I'll go ahead and place the shrine there. Then, I don't know, let's click on the road here. We'll have it northeast so it's facing. Place a shrine. Now at this point, the server's not reloaded, so they wouldn't show. But if I go ahead and hit stop world, I hit start world, and we're actually going to move over now to my other screen. We're going to open up an instance of WoW, and we're going to verify that those items are in fact there, so you can kind of see that in action. So this one was already here. We can see this one is here. We can see that one is there where we placed it. And this is a great moment to show you the add-on that comes embedded in the website. You can download it from the website, but it allows you to scan for items. I can hit the songflower, which is this object in front of me. I can then say face me, so it has its positioning. You can move this forwards, you can move this left. You can change it with radians, about 15 degrees. Well, so anyways, back to the website. So that's the world map. We go into items. You can click an item, you can clone it, give it a new name, you can edit the original. I'm going to put flavor text test. I'm going to say damage minimum 10, max damage 15, and I'm going to go ahead and save the item. This shows me only the fields that were changed, which means the fields from before are still all the same that aren't those three. If I go to the activity log, I would see the bent staff. It would show me the state before in a JSON, and it would show me the state after. So if I wanted to undo that change, I could come to the bent staff, I could hit reset to original, and that would reset to the original, and this also gets logged in the activity log. It's basically an auditor, if you will. We talk about spells. I think Blizzard is a good explanation here. If I open rank 1, I can modify, Blizzard, the spell, rank 1 if I wanted to. However, I could also do a batch edit, given that there's only 9 fields that actually differ between all the different ranks, and that little drop down is here so you can look at what does change between the different ranks. Otherwise, everything else that's shared, you can batch edit that so that you're not having to go through and muck about with each one. I don't have a clone built into this yet because I personally don't want to do that, but it is something that I could do just following the items all the same. If we go to game objects, this is where I've created my shrine as a test. Say the curing shrine, you have the 3D, I think they're called the GLB files. Don't remember if it's GPL or GLB. You can kind of get it to spin around, that's fun. I think I'll add that to items as well. You can clone or edit the original. If you clone, it inherits all of the fields and properties, although of course, you're obviously going to have to give it a different name. If you change the type to say spellcaster, then the fields change because the related fields that it needs are no longer the same as a goober type. I don't actually understand half of these flags, so I've just mucked about with the minimum ones, but the items that I showed you in game is this songflower here, and I changed this from a goober to a spell. I gave it songflower, and it's in the game, and it gives you songflower with unlimited use. So as an example, there's further refinement to be done for maybe adding scripting, but not part of the package yet. Loot Tuner is a fast way to change some of the, I'd call it the gameplay loop again. And I'm going to go ahead and reset to original for a moment. But if I wanted to change all rare items from all loot sources of weapon, armor, consumable, and recipe type on all creatures, but this is not in Dungeons and Raids. You can if you want or not. You would preview the changes. This would show you all of the items that are going to be affected. We've effectively selected 4,978. I'd like to put a 3x modifier on it, and I could apply these changes. I've now updated these with a 3x multiplier, I think. Again, in something like here, if somebody else had a different way they wanted to kind of batch things together, that could be an interesting concept. This is just what I've come up with from, my, if you will, WoW knowledge, not necessarily VMaNGOS knowledge. The instance loot, a different way to look at the instance loot that I prefer, go to Blackrock Depths, say General Angerforge. It shows me his direct drops. It will show me what pools he has. In this case, I'll use the Emperor. But we see that he has this shared pool. He has this pool here. These are the shared drop chances of these different items. You can change how many picks from this pool. You could say I want this to be 2 picks or 3 picks, etc., etc., etc. And some of these tables are kind of not really copies of each other, but different ways to look at the data, I'd say. The ARPG lootifier, again, this entire web UI was for me so that as a solo player, I could rapidly change things and enjoy ultimately vanilla WoW, but with some gameplay loop changes. You can either do a single source like Edwin Van Cleef, let's say. I can choose his items. Right now I'm not doing flat items with no stats, but for items that do have stats, you can choose a budget ceiling, which means we're going to choose 10 variants, say with a 35% budget ceiling, could be plus 20, whatever. You can name the tiers, and I'll show you what that means. It's basically these 3 blues now get an extra 10 items each with a variation. It's the same weapon, same item, same piece of armor or whatever, but it rolls more stats and it has, again, a higher budget ceiling. Let's say that Cape of the Brotherhood had +6 and +2 of something. Well, now it would have, that summed amount plus 35%. This isn't super refined, but it's, I'd say, a work in progress on being able to add some replayability to dungeons and raids so that you could chase down, the better variants a little bit ARPG-esque. Very open to improvements here on this page, as this is really just kind of the initial thing. You commit these to the database. If we were to go do a SQL pool, you would see that this has been added to the reference loop template, for that boss, for example. But I'm going to go ahead and roll that back. You can also do this via batch mode. So again, I'd like to do all rare boss items in, let's say, all the dungeons that are in the game. That's going to be 803 items across 134 creatures. This is going to create 8,000 new items. We would hit commit to database. It's going to take a moment while it's committing the items. It's obviously a fair little bit. So if you were to run this, say, against a lot of green items throughout the entire world. Potentially, you could be looking at quite a while. I'd have to look at a different way to potentially make that faster. This is more intended at dungeons and raids and maybe the open world, some rares or elites. Just a fun way to, again, increase the variation in a very rapid manner without needing to go through and manually add all these different things. So we'll go next into the still running, just taking a minute. I did it with smaller batches earlier. And it'll show you all the different bosses that you've chosen from the dungeons. I'm also not nearly as familiar with my SQL, and as such, there's, again, more room for improvement in terms of speed. But okay, we went ahead and added 7,747 items. The downloads page, this is as I build add-ons that kind of go hand in hand, like the object placer, will be available for download so that it's just there. Honestly, it's just a convenient way for me to package this all in. The settings page, very important. This is really where you would be setting your server data, port, etc., the passwords for the different, databases, your remote access data, the paths and resources, because a lot of what I'm using in the web app is stuff that you will have to supply yourself, that I can certainly help with that. But for example, the maps data and in the full release, the item data and the GLB data, I've built a C# WinForms app that extracts that a bit faster than, say, the wow.export. As for thousands of rows, that one is very painful to use. And so one of my big asks is, how do I help people get this up and running, but also understand where to correctly place their different files, and then how to make sure that they're putting the correct configurations here. Is I need to understand how to write this instruction page, as this is a huge part of making this usable by somebody else. As it's exposed, yes, but still there's a lot to kind of fill in. Thank you so much for watching, if you did, and please feel free to write whatever is relative to you in terms of feedback, so that I can work on getting this as a v1.0 to GitHub.